Hi, this is Miss Wright, and I'm going to be reading A Christmas Story from 145th Street Short Stories by Walter Dean Myers. It was rumored that Mother Fletcher was well over 90 years old. She had become a legend on 145th Street. If anybody wanted to know what the neighborhood looked like in the 20s, where Jack Johnson had lived, perhaps, or where James Baldwin's father had preached, Mother Fletcher could tell you. Patrolman William Michael O'Brien had heard about her shortly after his assignment to the precinct, but it wasn't until nearly 3 months later that he actually met the old woman. He was on foot patrol and had stopped to pass a few words with one of the local shopkeepers when a young black girl came running up to him and told him that Mother Fletcher was sick and needed an ambulance. O'Brien knew that in this neighborhood it was nearly impossible to get a doctor who would make house calls, but he also but he had also been told that sometimes the people use ambulances just to go downtown. He followed the girl into one of the buildings and into the first floor apartment. The place was small but spotless. The floor was covered with linoleum, with a linoleum rug that was worn through in several spots. The porcelain in the kitchen sink was discolored, but the brass fixtures were shining brightly. "She's in here," the girl said, and went into the adjoining room. Mother Fletcher sat upright in the white-sheeted bed, her pale green housecoat pinned at the neck. O'Brien had never seen as black a woman in his entire life. Her skin was a dull ebony that seemed almost purple in the light of the lamp by her bed. Her gray hair, still streaked with wisps of black and thinner on the sides than on the top, framed her face, and catching the light, made her look like a black version of a painted medieval saint. She was a small person in the delicate way that a child is small, but with the quiet grace of her years. But what stood out most on the old woman were her eyes. They were, if it was possible, even darker than her skin. Black, shiny eyes that darted brightly about, checking the room for anything that might have been out of place. "Didn't my grandchild here tell you I was sick?" Mother Fletcher shot a glance in the direction of the girl. "I gave her a dime to tell you." "I mean," O'Brien said, "what exactly is the matter?" "How do I know? I'm not a doctor." Mother Fletcher pulled the housecoat tighter around her thin shoulders. "What's your name, please?" "Mother Fletcher." "What's your first name?" "I'm Mother Fletcher, that's all." "Now, are you going to get me an ambulance, or do I have to send that child out for another officer?" "We can't just call an ambulance any time someone says to call one," O'Brien said. "Boy, I am not someone," the old woman said. "I am Mother Fletcher, and you can call for an ambulance. You know how to use that radio you got?" "What's your age?" O'Brien flipped out his radio and called the emergency network. "Full grown," came the flat reply. O'Brien stepped into the next room and told the operator what he had. The ambulance arrived some 15 minutes later. Two slim attendants carried the old woman out. O'Brien wrote up the incident in his book and promptly put it out of his mind. A week later, he was called into one of the precinct offices where a lieutenant and two patrolmen were waiting for him. O'Brien, Lieutenant Stanton rolled a cigar from one side of his mouth to the other. What's this I hear about you taking graft? I don't know what you're talking about, O'Brien answered. Well, this package just came in from someone on your beat, and it's addressed to your shield number. Lieutenant was enjoying this. Looks like graft to me, O'Brien. Open it up. O'Brien looked at the childish scrawl on the top of the box. To Officer 4566. There was no return address. He flipped open the flimsy box and took out the contents. It was a knitted green cardigan. Instead of a brand name on the label, it simply repeated his badge number, 4566. O'Brien tried it on and was surprised to discover that it fit even his long arms. I wonder who it's from. Mother Fletcher, the lieutenant said. You do anything for her? Mother Fletcher? Oh, yes, the old black lady. I called an ambulance for her. No big thing. She probably started making a sweater for you on the way to the hospital, Lieutenant Stanton said. We had another guy here about 2 years ago that straightened out a hassle she had with her landlord. She made him a sweater too, then decided that the landlord was right after all, and she made him a sweater. I guess it makes her feel good. You can put a couple of bucks in the precinct fund to make up for the sweater. And don't forget to go around and thank Mother Fletcher. It's good community PR, public relations. O'Brien got around to thanking the old woman a few days later, telling her how his wife had been jealous of such a fine sweater. 3 weeks later, another package arrived at the station house. It was a sweater for his wife. When he went over to thank Mother Fletcher for the second sweater, he was careful not to mention that he had a 6-year-old daughter. Over the next months, O'Brien learned more about Mother Fletcher from people on his beat. Some stories were a bit far-fetched, but they were all told in a way that said that people loved the old woman. She did her own shopping, always carrying the same blue cloth shopping bag, and always walking on the sunny side of the street to keep the bones warm. Once O'Brien met her on the corner of 147th Street and asked her how she was feeling. I'm feeling just fine. I'm not cutting a rug, she said, but I'm not lying on it either. O'Brien talked to her now and again when he saw her on the street and started writing down everything she said, trying to piece together enough information to determine her true age. In truth, Mother Fletcher was the only one in the precinct that he thought of during his off-duty hours. The struggling hassles of Harlem were not what he wanted to bring home with him. It didn't take O'Brien long to subscribe to the precinct motto, 8 and straight. 8 hours on the job and straight out of the neighborhood. To O'Brien, out of the neighborhood meant home to a ranch house in suburban Staten Island. He looked forward to the day when his wife, Kathy, could quit her job with the utility company and stay home with their daughter, Megan. He had told Kathy about Mother Fletcher, and they had gone over his notes in the evening trying to figure her age. Beyond this, O'Brien was careful to keep his job apart from his family. At least he was until just before Christmas. Hi, honey, Bill called out as he ducked in from the light snow. Dinner's almost ready, Kathy answered as she came from the kitchen. Did you ask Mother Fletcher if she remembered when Woodrow Wilson was elected president? Yep. Well, what did she say? Kathy wiped her hands on her apron. She said she remembered it. Did she remember how old she was then? Nope, unless you can figure out how old about half grown is, Bill said. He tousled his daughter's hair and sat on the couch. What else did she say? Kathy folded one leg under herself and sat on it. Not much. I think she knows that I'm trying to figure out her age and she's playing with me. Bill glanced towards the kitchen and sniffed the air. Is that roast beef? Chicken, Kathy answered. So that's all she said today? No, she complained about how loud the teenagers play their radios, and oh, yeah, she invited us to Christmas dinner. Who invited us to dinner? Megan looked up from her book. A lady Daddy knows in Harlem, sweetheart. Can you can we take presents over? We won't be going over, Bill said. Why, Daddy? We have other plans. We're going to what are we doing for Christmas, Kathy? Nothing. Then we can go, Megan said. Kathy, will you deal with your daughter? Bill smiled as he reached for the paper. She's too much for me. No, I won't, Kathy got up. I'm going to start serving dinner, and Megan has a right to ask a question. Hey, hey, let's not make an issue of this, Bill said. She just asked for a simpler explanation, Bill. Kathy was annoyed. The lady is a little different, that's all, Bill spoke to his daughter. The place she lives in isn't very nice, and Daddy would rather not spend his Christmas in that kind of neighborhood. Is she a poor lady? Yes, she's a poor lady. Then we can take her presents because poor people like presents. We'll send her a present if you want, Megan. Bill rose from the couch and went into the living room, snapping on the television before sitting down. Kathy followed him in. I don't like the idea of being made out to be a bad guy, Kathy, Bill said without looking away from the 6 o'clock news. One word from you could have helped that little situation in there. Why didn't you just give her the same answer you gave Mother Fletcher? What did you tell her? There are times, Kathy, when you don't give direct answers to questions. It's a way of dealing with people. You don't reject them, and you don't get yourself involved in a whole scene. Like this one, I might add. Would you mind giving me a direct answer? What did you tell her? I told her yes, we'd come, but they know we don't come into that neighborhood when we're off duty, Bill answered, and they're not that anxious to have us come either. You said yes, that you'd come? Kathy pulled her glasses from the top of her head and put them on. That's your way of not answering a question directly? I'll send her a present. That's awful sweet of you, Mr. O'Brien. Kathy went back to the kitchen. Bill turned up the television and watched as some senator complained about the military budget. If his wife had chosen this occasion to have one of their special I simply don't understand periods, he wasn't going to fight her. He also had he also heard snatches of the conversation drifting from the kitchen. Megan was talking about getting a kitten and was trying to decide between a calico and a tabby. At any rate, she seemed to have forgotten Mother Fletcher. He only hoped that Kathy would too. And apparently she had, for that was the last O'Brien had heard about visiting the old woman. That is, it was the last thing until just after 11 on Christmas morning. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, feeling especially regal in his smoking jacket that Kathy had given him, watching a college football game, when Kathy and Megan came into the room with their coats on. Okay, I'm going to stop part 1 of this video here. We are on page 112. There's only 4 more pages, so hopefully you can read that on your own. If I get time, I will include a second video, but I will see you back in class. Bye-bye.